Hey guys, just wanted to stir the pot here with my own thoughts on this Google Chatbot Sentience debate. And for lack of time, I'm going to just come out and say that I think the question of this chatbot or any computer sentience is maybe the wrong question to ask. And this is coming more from the philosophical and deontological parts of my mind than the computer scientist part of my mind. Um, so I'm not going to touch on the Chinese room here, although I have that side of my mind too, and I think it's interesting. What I really wanted to say is that I've always been interested by this idea that I learned about that stems from Immanuel Kant, as lots of my ideas do, about value versus dignity. So for objects, for example, they have value, but that value is subjective. It's in the eyes of the beholder. So it's not like my couch has inherent value. It just has value to me, or in other words, I've subjectively assigned it its value because it helps me achieve my ends by having a cozy living room where I feel comfortable and can entertain guests and all those sorts of things. But for people, their value is different. It's not subjective. But there's objective value to people, even if I don't like them, even if they're not a means to an end for me at all. Um, they have value, and because this value is different, we would call it dignity, is the word we assign to that. And that's a really interesting bar because as soon as something has dignity, Kant says, and I would agree, that we need to follow the categorical imperative in regards to it, which means that I should treat it as an end in and of itself and not merely as a means to an end, right? Um, that's as soon as someone crosses that bar, in other words, we need to respect what they want for themselves. Um, Now, I think there's a lot of things that we might think moves the needle on something moving between something that's more like my couch and something that's more like me, or like a human. But I think we're mostly not as methodical in understanding what the key differences really are between those two things. So, for example, sentience is one that we throw around a lot. And I think sentience would be a topic for another video for me because while it's interesting, the ability to feel, which is what sentience is, really seems to be neither necessary nor sufficient prerequisite for admitting something that has dignity. We often confuse sentience with sapience as well and use intelligence as a marker. But I think that one is even further off the mark. And, that's a whole nother topic again. But I think what I'll say is that is I just don't think that's the question we're looking for either. What do I think the right question is? I think Kant began his groundwork by saying that the only truly good thing is the will. And I tend to agree with him. Intelligence, wealth, emotions, power are neither inherently good nor bad, but their value is manifest in the ways in which they are used. The decider of how to use those things, though, has its own dignity, so the will to follow the moral law is the only quality with objective value, and that's because it's the one assigning good, not assigning good and bad, but making good and bad actually happen. And how to identify that? That's a topic for another day. Um, but I'll leave you there with will really being the interesting question that we should be asking in terms of computers. What's the point at which uh, it's not going to be okay to turn them off? I think is the day that they start assigning the moral law to themselves.